In the stillness of early dawn, when the world is quiet and breathless, there is a truth that echoes louder than any voice. It is the whisper of impermanence, the sacred rhythm of life itself. We are born, we live, we pass on, each step stitched together, not by chaos, but by an unseen order. Every moment, no matter how trivial or tragic, unfolds exactly as it must. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is random. Everything happens for a reason. This is not the comfort of fate, nor the escape of predestination. It is the clarity of mindfulness, the light that dawns when we begin to see, not just with our eyes, but with our entire being. The Buddha never promised a life without pain. He promised a way to transform it, to walk through fire and become ash, then rise again, not in spite of the burn, but because of it. Consider your own suffering, not from a place of victimhood, but as a sacred witness. The heartbreak, the failure, the silence that kept you awake at night. These were not punishments, they were awakenings. You were not being broken. You were being opened. You were not being delayed. You were being prepared. Every time the ground crumbled beneath you, the Dharma was quietly laying a foundation. Every door that slammed shut behind you was guiding you to the pathless path, the one that doesn't follow the world's map, but traces the shape of your soul. To understand this is to reframe our perception. The mind, when left unchecked, becomes a storm. It rages with desire, clings to illusions, resists change. But when trained, through awareness, through stillness, through right view, it becomes the very instrument of liberation. The mind can either enslave us or set us free. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment, from ignorance, from aversion. But he also taught that these roots can be uprooted, that we are not condemned to cycle forever in that through the Eightfold Path we can awaken from the dream of separateness and see clearly, see that nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed. Faith, then, is not belief without evidence. It is trust rooted in direct experience. When you sit with your breath, moment after moment, and feel the body dissolve into the present, something ancient awakens within you, a knowing beyond logic, a remembering that you are not separate from the river, the stars, the suffering of a stranger. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean, temporarily appearing as a drop. And what of the pain that refuses to leave? The grief that lingers like incense smoke? Do not resist it. Bow to it. Hold it in your hands like a sacred object. The Buddha did not transcend suffering by avoiding it. He walked straight into it, with open eyes and a heart unarmored. To believe that everything happens for a reason is not to minimize tragedy. It is to recognize the sacred in the shattered. The lotus does not bloom despite the mud. It blooms because of mud is not the enemy. It is the nourishment. Let us speak now of vision. Not the vision of the eyes, but of the soul. The capacity to look into chaos and see a pattern, to stare into the unknown and find presence. Vision is the fruit of awareness. It is born when we stop running and begin to sit, when we stop fixing and start listening. Purpose is not found in achievement. It is revealed in alignment. When your thoughts, words, and actions are in harmony, not with ego but with truth, you do not need a grand plan. Every step becomes the destination. Every moment becomes enough. Discipline is not punishment. It is devotion, a sacred structure that holds you steady when the world shakes. To wake before the sun, to bow in silence, to offer your breath to the present, that is not rigidity. It is reverence and action. Right action is the natural expression of wisdom. It does not seek applause. It is not driven by outcome. It arises from clarity and compassion, like a tree that gives shade without asking who rests beneath it. Gratitude is not a reaction to pleasure. It is a posture of the heart. When you realize that every breath is borrowed, every sunrise unpromised, your entire life becomes a prayer. You stop asking, "Why me?" and begin whispering, "Thank you." Adaptability is not weakness. It is wisdom in motion. To bend without breaking. To let go without losing yourself. This is not passivity. It is presence. A tree that cannot sway will snap in the storm. A heart that cannot soften will harden into bitterness. Resilience is not resistance. It is surrender without defeat. To cry and still rise. To be wounded and still love. To be lost and still trust. It is the quiet power of the awakened heart. And learning, true learning is not accumulation. It is unlearning. It is the shedding of illusion. The dissolving of the false self. The remembrance of what has always been true, that you are already whole, already enough, already free. So let this truth settle in you like morning light. Everything happens for a reason, not because life is scripted, but because it is sacred, because every fall is an invitation to rise, and every ending is the beginning of something holy. You were not meant to understand it all. You were meant to live it all with presence, with courage, with love. Awaken, breathe, begin again. Underneath the fabric of everyday life lies an invisible thread, woven not with logic or strategy, but with deep, unshakable wisdom. Life, in its most intimate form, is not something to be figured out. It is something to be lived, to be met with open arms and a heart that dares to stay open even when everything urges it to close. We do not walk this path to control our destiny, but to understand our nature. The difference is subtle, yet it changes everything. Often we beg the universe for answers. We cry out in pain, demanding explanations. Why did this happen? Why me? Why now? But the Dharma gently turns our gaze inward. Not to offer quick fixes, but to cultivate deep seeing. To ask a more transformative question. What is this moment asking me to become? This is where the teaching of karma comes alive, not as punishment or reward, but as an unfolding. Karma is not a ledger. It is a mirror. Every thought, every action, every intention ripples through the web of existence. What we do matters. Who we are matters. But not in the way the world defines success or failure. In Buddhism, meaning is not found in accumulation. It is found in alignment. When your actions, even the smallest ones, are rooted in compassion, awareness and clarity, they begin to shape not only your life, but the world around you. You become a vessel, not of control, but of contribution. And yet the ego resists this truth. It clings. It constructs identities around pain and pride. It wants life to bend to its will. But the Buddha's teachings invite us to soften, to witness how suffering arises not because of what happens, but because of our relationship to what happens. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. This is the path of liberation, not from life, but through it. To walk this path, we need more than belief. We need courage, the courage to be still, to look inward, to dismantle the narratives we've built around who we think we are. Courage to meet the moment without hiding, defending or escaping. This is not easy. It is a radical act in a world that celebrates distraction and noise. But in the quiet spaces of sincere reflection, we rediscover something essential, our original face. Before the world told us who to be, this is the face of presence. It is the stillness in the eye of the storm. It is the silence beneath the thoughts. It is not passive. It is not weak. It is fiercely alive, holding joy and sorrow with equal reverence. When we live from this place, our lives cease to be about outcome. They become about presence. We begin to understand that the destination is not somewhere far away. It is here, in this breath, in this step, in this conversation. The path is not something we find, it is something we become. You see, the wisdom of the Buddha is not about escape, it is about embodiment. He did not teach us to transcend the world, but to walk through it with eyes wide open and hearts undefended. Enlightenment is not a place, it is a way of seeing, a way of being, a way of loving without conditions. There is immense freedom in this, not the freedom to do whatever we want, but the freedom to no longer be bound by what we don't need, the freedom to release blame, to release resentment, to release the need to prove ourselves. In this freedom we return to what is real, not what is ideal, but what is. The rains will come, the storms will rage, but when the roots are deep, the tree does not fear the wind. And when the heart is grounded in truth, no suffering can uproot its peace. So how do we deepen our roots? Through practice, not just meditation, but living meditation. Walking with mindfulness, eating with gratitude, speaking with intention, listening with openness. This is the way of the Bodhisattva, not a perfect being, but a committed one. One who chooses, again and again, to return to presence, to compassion, to wisdom, no matter how many times they fall. The Buddha did not say the path would be easy. He said it would be worth it, because it is the only path that leads us back to ourselves. And yet, the beauty of this path is that it is never walked alone. Even when you feel isolated, even when the silence feels heavy, you are being carried by the teachings, by the breath, by the presence of all those who have walked before you and all those walking beside you now, seen and unseen. You are never truly alone. The Sangha, the community, is not just a group of monks in robes. It is every being committed to waking up. It is the friend who listens without judgment, the stranger who offers kindness, the teacher who speaks a truth that rattles something awake inside you. The community is a net. It catches us when we fall. It holds us when we are too tired to hold ourselves. In its presence we remember our own strength, and we do fall. We falter. We forget. This too is part of the path. Do not shame yourself for forgetting. Do not measure your progress by how perfectly you practice. The path is not a straight line. It is a spiral. You will revisit the same wounds, the same fears, the same longings, but each time you come with more awareness, more tenderness, more wisdom, and slowly, without even realizing it, you are transformed. Transformation is not dramatic, it is subtle. It is waking up one morning and realizing that the thing that once controlled you no longer does, that the reaction that once felt automatic now feels optional, that the story you once clung to has lost its hold. This is the quiet revolution of inner work. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand attention, but it changes everything. So let your life become your practice. Let your pain become your teacher. Let your breath become your anchor. Let your presence become your gift to the world. Everything happens for a reason, not because the universe owes us answers, but because every experience is a doorway. Some doors open gently, others break us open, but all of them lead us inward, to the truth we've been carrying all along, that we are not broken, we are becoming, and the becoming is the point. And what is it that we are becoming? Not someone new, but someone more true. Not someone greater, but someone more real. The path of awakening is not about improvement, it is about remembering. Remembering who we were before we were told who we should be. Before the world layered expectations upon our spirit. Before the wounds made us build walls. Before fear taught us to shrink ourselves to fit into spaces too small for our light. We are not here to become someone else. We are here to shed what is not ours. To release the false identities, the survival masks, the hardened armor. Awakening is not an addition. It is a subtraction. It is peeling back the layers until what is left is raw, radiant, and real. And in that rawness there is power. Because in truth, we are not fragile. We only think we are because we confuse vulnerability with weakness. But the Buddha taught that to open one's heart in a world that numbs, distracts and avoids is the highest form of courage. To love in the face of impermanence. To trust in the face of uncertainty. To offer kindness when it is not returned. These are not signs of naivety. They are the marks of a deeply trained soul. It takes strength to be soft. It takes wisdom to forgive. It takes freedom to release the desire to be right, and instead choose to be whole. And so much of our suffering stems not from what has happened, but from what we continue to carry. We carry the weight of old wounds, old stories, old identities. We say we want peace, but we cling to pain because it is familiar. The story of me becomes a cage, and we mistake it for a home. But the Dharma invites us to put the story down, not to reject our past, but to stop worshipping it, not to erase our pain, but to stop identifying with it. What happened to you is real, but it is not all of who you are. You are not your trauma. You are not your mistakes. You are not even your thoughts. You are the awareness that sees it all. This is why mindfulness is not just a technique. It is a revolution, because when we become present, we reclaim our power, no longer lost in yesterday or worried about tomorrow. We become available to this moment fully, and in this moment, we are free. Free to choose a different thought, free to offer a gentler word, free to take a conscious breath instead of reacting out of habit. Freedom in Buddhism is not the absence of difficulty, it is the presence of choice. And choice is born from awareness. Awareness, however, is not built overnight. It is cultivated like a garden, with patience, with care, and with commitment. You sit, you breathe, you notice, and at first, the mind will rebel. It will scream for distraction, for stimulation, for anything but silence. But if you stay, if you return, again and again, you begin to see through the noise. You begin to taste stillness, not a silence that is empty, but a silence that is full of life, of presence, of knowing. And it is in this silence that you meet yourself, not the self that is shaped by the world, but the self that watches the world with compassion and clarity, the self that needs nothing to prove its worth, the self that knows that everything that comes must go, and everything that goes leaves a teaching. When you learn to sit with yourself, truly sit, without judgment or distraction, something sacred begins to unfold. You begin to trust the impermanence of life. You stop chasing what cannot last. You stop resisting what must pass. And in that surrender, you touch something timeless. This is where true peace is found, not in control but in connection. Connection to what is, as it is. And this connection is not passive. It is active. It is alive. It calls us to participate in life, not as victims or bystanders, but as sacred witnesses, as compassionate warriors, as beings willing to meet life, moment by moment, with open hands and an open heart, because life will not wait for you to be ready. It will continue to unfold, breath by breath, wave by wave, and your task is not to brace against the waves, but to learn how to surf them, to become flexible, adaptable, fluid, like water. Water does not resist, it flows. It finds the lowest place and fills it without complaint. It moves around obstacles without losing its nature, and when necessary, it becomes powerful enough to shape mountains. So too must we become like water, soft but unyielding, humble but strong. This is the power of adaptability, and in a world that is constantly shifting, this power is vital, because change is not the enemy. Resistance to change is. Life is motion, growth is movement, and when we resist what is, we suffer. But when we flow with what arises, We begin to dance with life instead of fighting it. This does not mean we become passive, it means we become wise. We act when it is time to act. We rest when it is time to rest. We speak when it is time to speak. We listen when it is time to listen. And through it all we remain anchored in presence. This is the essence of balance, not static stillness, but dynamic equilibrium. And in this equilibrium we discover joy, not the fleeting joy of stimulation, but the steady joy of being, the joy of a quiet morning, the joy of a kind word, the joy of breathing in and knowing you are alive. This joy is not loud, it does not demand attention, but it is the soil in which all other virtues grow. And from this soil resilience rises. Resilience is not about toughness, it is not about pretending to be okay. True resilience is about openness. It is about feeling deeply, falling completely, and rising anyway. It is about choosing to keep your heart open, even after it has been broken. It is about letting sorrow soften you, not harden you, because to live is to lose, to love is to risk, and yet, we do it anyway, because beneath all our fears, there is a knowing that love is always worth it, that even the deepest pain cannot erase the light that birthed us, that even in our darkest nights, the dawn is waiting to return, and so we rise, not as perfect beings, but as present one. We rise with breath, we rise with awareness, we rise with compassion, not just for ourselves, but for the world. Because once we taste true presence, we can no longer turn away. We begin to see suffering not as a statistic, but as a reflection. The pain of another is our own, the joy of another is our own, and from this realization, a new way of living emerges, one rooted not in separation, but in solidarity. This is the heart of the Bodhisattva path, to awaken, not just for oneself, but for all being, to commit again and again, to show up with love, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because every time you choose compassion over judgment, presence over distraction, forgiveness over resentment, you become a lighthouse. And in a world as stormy as ours, we need every light we can find. And here's the final truth: you are not behind, you are not late, you are exactly where you need to be. Everything that has happened has brought you here, not to punish you, but to prepare you. The pain, the joy, the waiting, the loss, all of it has carved a space inside you, and now that space is ready to be filled, not with answers, but with awareness, not with certainty, but with courage, not with control, but with compassion. Everything happens for a reason, not to test you, but to teach you, not to break you, but to build you, not to destroy you, but to deliver you into the truth of who you are. You are not what happened to you, you are what you choose to become next. And every breath is a chance to begin again. So begin again. Begin not because you are broken, but because you are whole enough to grow. Begin not because you must fix something, but because there is more of you waiting to be lived. Every sunrise is a quiet invitation from the universe, a whisper that says you have another chance, not to be perfect, but to be present. To live a mindful life is not to live a life without chaos. It is to remain rooted in clarity while walking through the storm. It is to remember, with each inhale and each exhale, that you are more than your thoughts. You are more than your pain. You are more than your past. And that memory, that sacred remembering, is what draws you back to yourself. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to come home. Again and again. Come home to the breath. Come home to this moment. Come home to the tender truth that you are worthy, not because of what you do, but because you are. This is what so many of us forget in the striving and struggling. We tie our worth to titles, to achievements, to how many people admire us, or how little we fail. But the Buddha reminds us that our intrinsic value is not based on external validation. It is based on being, on awareness, on compassion. You were born worthy, No wound can erase that. You were born whole. No mistake can take that from you. So let go of the illusion that you must earn your right to be here. You are here. That is enough. The tree does not try to be taller than its neighbor. The moon does not envy the sun. They simply offer their light. So too must you offer your presence, and presence is the greatest gift you can give. To yourself, to others, to the world. Because when you are truly present, you begin to listen differently. You listen not to reply, but to understand. You listen with your heart, not just your ears. You hear the silence beneath someone's words. You sense the grief hiding behind a smile. You feel the tenderness behind someone's anger. And suddenly, the world becomes more than a battlefield. It becomes a temple. Every interaction becomes sacred. Every connection becomes an opportunity to heal. Not just others, but yourself. This is the power of compassion. And it begins with you. So many of us want to be kind to the world, but we forget to be kind to ourselves. We speak to ourselves with words we would never say to a friend. We shame ourselves for feeling. We punish ourselves for feeling. We punish ourselves for falling. We push ourselves to keep going when what we really need is rest. But the Buddha taught that true compassion is not selective. It does not exclude the self. In fact, it begins there, because only when we have tasted the medicine of kindness can we offer it to others without expectation. So let your heart be soft with you. Let your mind be patient with you. Let your breath be gentle with you. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are not lost. You are unfolding. And unfolding takes time. The lotus does not rush to bloom. It moves with the rhythm of nature, with the wisdom of the seasons. It rises through the mud, not because it hates the dark, but because it trusts the light. It knows the sun is waiting. So it grows, not in spite of the mud, but because of it. And so must we. Because the mud is not our enemy. It is our teacher. It shows us what still needs healing. It shows us where we are stuck. It reveals the places we are still afraid to love. And that is not a curse. That is a blessing. Only when we see the mud can we begin to grow through it. And what do we find on the other side of the mud? Grace. Grace is not the absence of hardship. It is the presence of meaning within hardship. It is the golden thread running through the dark fabric of our suffering. It is what makes pain sacred, what makes endurance noble, what makes forgiveness possible. Grace is what holds us when nothing else does. And grace is what opens us again and again to the truth that we are never alone. Even in our loneliest moments, we are held by the breath, held by the earth, held by the lineage of all those who have walked this path before us. And when you begin to live from this knowing, everything changes. You stop rushing, you stop grasping, you stop running away, and you start simply being with what is, not because it's easy, but because it's true, and the truth, no matter how raw, is always kinder than illusion. So don't be afraid to see clearly. See where you've hardened. See where you've closed. See where you've forgotten your own light. Because seeing is the beginning of transformation. When we see with honesty, we return to humility. And humility is not weakness. It is power anchored in awareness. It is the quiet confidence of knowing that you do not need to dominate the world. You need only to meet it. And in meeting the world with sincerity, you find your path. Not the path others told you to follow, but your path. The one that speaks to your soul. The one that lights something ancient inside you. The one that calls you home. That path may not be glamorous. It may not be popular. It may not be understood by those around you, but it will be real. And real is always enough, because the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be lived. And the truth is this: you are here for a reason. not to chase perfection, but to embody presence, not to avoid pain, but to alchemize it into wisdom, not to impress others, but to love deeply, to love yourself, to love this world, to love this breath, this moment, this life, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because love is not just a feeling, it is a practice, and every moment gives you another chance to practice, to open instead of close, to soften instead of resist, to stay instead of flee, to forgive instead of hold, to trust instead of fear, to be still instead of escape. This is the sacred work, and it is not always grand. Sometimes it is simply sitting with your sadness instead of numbing it. Sometimes it is choosing to get out of bed when everything feels heavy. Sometimes it is taking one conscious breath and not letting the world rush you. Sometimes it is saying I don't know and letting that be okay. Sometimes it is resting. Sometimes it is crying. Sometimes it is laughing, even when nothing is fixed, because nothing needs to be fixed. When you begin to see with the eyes of wholeness, you were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be present, and presence changes everything. Because when you are present, you are in harmony with life, and when you are in harmony with life, life begins to meet you in unexpected ways. Doors open, paths appear, synchronicities bloom, and the very thing you were searching for begins to find you. Not because you chased it, but because you became still enough to receive it. This is the wisdom of the Buddha. Not to seek more, but to see more clearly. To see that everything you need is already here, inside of you, around you, always has been, always will be. Because everything, every joy, every heartbreak, every loss, every gift, has brought you to this moment, and in this moment, everything happens for a reason. This moment, it is not just a pause between two breaths. It is the point of power, the axis around which your entire life revolves. Because in this moment you choose. You choose whether to awaken or to sleep, whether to open or to shut down, whether to soften into compassion or harden into fear. Every sacred teaching you have ever heard points to this truth. The present is not a fragment of time, it is eternity unfolding. And so, life does not happen later. It happens now. Now, as you hear these words, something ancient stirs inside of you. Not new knowledge, but remembrance. Not a discovery, but a return. You are not being taught, you are being reminded. Reminded that you have always known how to live. You've just been distracted by noise, stories, survival and sorrow. But underneath it all, your original nature remains untouched. Still, unshaken, like the depths of the ocean that are never disturbed by the waves above. To touch that place, you don't need to strive. You need to stop. To become quiet enough to hear the whisper beneath the chaos. That whisper is your true name. The part of you untouched by conditioning, untouched by judgment, untouched by time. And when you begin to live from that place, not as an ideal, but as an orientation, everything changes. Fear loses its grip, not because the danger is gone, but because your relationship with it has transformed. You begin to see fear for what it is, a messenger, not a master, a gatekeeper, not a god. You bow to it, listen to it, and then walk through it. You learn that courage is not the absence of fear, but the intimacy with it. To be afraid and to still act with heart. That is courage. That is the essence of the spiritual path. Not avoidance, not comfort, but courageous presence. And through courage, a deeper clarity arises. You begin to understand that people are not their behavior, they are their wounds. You see that cruelty is not strength, it is protection. That silence is not indifference, it is fear of being unheard. That anger is often pain in disguise. And from that clarity, compassion begins to flow, effortlessly, boundlessly. You stop needing to fix people. You start choosing to love them. You stop needing to change the world. You start becoming it. And this is not passive. It is powerful beyond measure. Because when you change your inner world, you shift the frequency of everything around you. The way you walk, the way you speak, the way you hold space. It all becomes medicine. People may not remember your words, but they will remember your presence. The way they felt seen, the way they felt safe, the way they felt free, even if only for a moment. That is what it means to be a living teaching. Not to quote the Dharma, but to embody it. Not to wear robes, but to wear reverence. Not to recite, but to radiate. Every moment becomes your monastery. The marketplace becomes your meditation. Your heartbreak becomes your sacred scripture. Because everything is the path. There is no separation. The sacred does not live only in temples or retreats. It lives in the sound of your child's laughter, in the ache of missing someone, in the silence between two people who love each other but don't know how to say it. It lives in the kitchen, the traffic, the office, the night shift. It lives wherever you live with awareness, and the greatest offering you can make to life is not your productivity, it is your presence, because presence heals. It dissolves shame, it melts defense, it creates space for grace to enter. And when grace enters, miracles unfold. Not the miracles that defy nature, but the miracles that arise when we are fully in harmony with it. The miracle of forgiveness, the miracle of connection, the miracle of a heart breaking open, not to bleed, but to bloom. And yet, even as you bloom, you will face loss, because everything you love will one day change form. This is the cost of loving in a world of impermanence, but it is a cost worth paying, because what you gain through love, true love, unconditional love, is not something that fades. It is something that plants itself in the soil of your soul and grows forever. Every being you have ever loved lives there. Every moment of tenderness, every touch of truth. Nothing is wasted, nothing is lost. It is all part of the great weaving. And when your heart breaks, let it break wide open, not so that you become bitter, but so that you become vast, so that more of life can live through you, so that you can hold not just your story, but the stories of others, so that your compassion is no longer conceptual, but lived, breathed, embodied. This is how wisdom ripens, not through books or beliefs, but through lived experience, through sitting with grief and not turning away, through witnessing injustice and still showing up, through falling and getting up, until getting up becomes your nature. The Buddha never said awakening was quick. He said it was possible. He said it was available. And he showed us how, not through promises, but through presence. So take this teaching into your hands, hold it gently, then bring it to your breath. Let it guide your footsteps. Let it soften your voice. Let it deepen your gaze, because when you embody wisdom, you become it. And the world doesn't need more opinions. It needs more embodied truth. More people who have turned their pain into compassion. More people who can hold the tension between hope and heartbreak, and still choose to love. More people who don't speak of light, but become it. And you, yes, you are being called into that becoming. Not because you are special, but because you are here. And being here is sacred. You were not born into this moment by accident. You were placed here by the unfolding of 1,000,000 lifetimes, and everything that has happened to you, the joy, the shame, the success, the failure, it has all conspired to make you ready, not ready to arrive, but ready to begin, again, and again, and again, because awakening is not a finish line, it is a way of walking, and the walking never ends, but neither does the grace. So walk, beloved one. Walk with presence, walk with patience, walk with the knowing that everything happens for a reason, not to punish you, but to purify you, not to crush you, but to carve you into something sacred, into someone who does not just believe in peace, but becomes a living field of it. Someone who does not just speak of love, but emanates it. Someone who does not just admire the Buddha, but becomes a continuation of his teaching. This is not beyond you. This is within you, closer than your next breath, quieter than your next thought. The path is here. The time is now. And you, ready not because you feel certain, but because you feel called. And that call, it is the voice of your own soul rising through the noise, rising through the fear, rising through the conditioning, rising to remind you of the one thing that never changes. You are not what happens to you. You are what you do with what happens. And when you choose presence, when you choose compassion, when you choose truth, you are choosing to become who you were always meant to be. Not someone new, but someone real. And real, dear one, is always enough. And so now, we arrive, not at an ending, but at a turning. Because the truth is, this journey has no final destination. There is no mountaintop where you plant a flag and declare, I have arrived. There is only this moment. And the next. And the next. Each one a doorway. Each one a choice. And the only real question is, how will you walk through it? Will you carry the weight of the past, or will you lay it down like a heavy garment that no longer fits? Will you run from your fear, or will you sit beside it like an old friend, learning its shape, its story, its sorrow? Will you keep seeking something more? Or will you finally recognize that what you've been searching for is already here? You are not a question waiting to be answered. You are an answer waiting to be lived. And this life, this brief, beautiful, breakable life is your canvas. Paint it with love. Color it with grace. Frame it with presence. You are the artist. You are the brush. You are the light that illuminates every stroke. And the world, oh, the world is waiting. Waiting not for your perfection, but for your authenticity. Not for your brilliance, but for your truth. Not for your certainty, but for your willingness to be real, to be raw, to be radically awake. Because the world doesn't need more polished masks. It needs more broken open hearts. Hearts that have wept and laughed and lost, and still choose to feel. Hearts that do not retreat from pain, but transform it into compassion. Hearts that know every wound is a temple, every scar is a scripture, every breath is a blessing. And even now, yes, even now you are being breathed by something ancient, something sacred. Call it Dharma, call it truth, call it love. It has no name, and yet it is the source of all names. It cannot be held, and yet it holds everything, and it is holding you. Even now, especially now, through your doubts, through your questions, through your silent prayers and your sleepless nights, through the ache of not knowing, through the beauty of surrender, it holds you. And in that holding, it whispers, Dear one, it was never about doing more. It was about remembering more. Remembering your softness, your light, your worth, your vastness, your stillness, your power. Because power, true power, is not loud, it is not forceful, it is not controlling. It is presence, it is patience. It is the kind of strength that does not need to dominate, because it knows who it is. The Buddha did not shout. He sat. He breathed. He saw. And the world was changed. And now, it is your turn. Not to imitate his footsteps, but to discover your own. To walk not behind him, but beside him. To realize that enlightenment is not a spotlight. It is a candle you carry inside your chest. And every time you choose love over fear, every time you pause before reacting, every time you breathe before speaking, every time you return to this moment, You light that candle anew, and you become a flame in a darkened world. You become a refuge, not just for yourself, but for others, for the stranger at the train station, for the child hiding behind broken eyes, for the mother holding back tears in the grocery line, for the friend who pretends to be okay, for the parts of yourself you've been afraid to face. You become a space, a field, a place where healing is possible, where people feel safe to exhale, to collapse, to begin again. You become the very thing you thought you had to search for. And that is the final paradox of the path. You were never lost. You were only remembering that pain is not the enemy. It is the doorway. That grief is not a punishment. It is a purifying fire. That life does not owe you certainty. It invites you into presence. And that everything, every wound, every joy, every goodbye, every silence is sacred. Yes, sacred. Not because it is easy, but because it is real. And reality, when met with open eyes and an undefended heart, becomes revelation. So stop waiting for the storm to pass. Be still within it. Let it teach you how to stand, how to sway like the bamboo, how to trust like the river, how to remain rooted like the mountain. You don't need the path to be smooth. You only need to keep walking, one breath at a time, one bow at a time, one awakening at a time. And with each step, remember, you are not here to prove anything. You are here to be something, to be alive, to be awake, to be in love with this moment, not because it is perfect, but because it is yours. And in the grand, unspeakable mystery of existence, that is enough, more than enough. So stand up, dust off the past, meet your gaze in the mirror, and see not a project, not a problem, not a plan. See a present, see a possibility, see a sacred flame that will not be extinguished. No matter the wind, no matter the night, no matter the noise. And if ever you forget, return here, return to the breath, return to the silence between words, return to the space within your chest that nothing can touch, and you will hear it again. That soft, eternal truth. Everything happens for a reason, not always the reason your mind seeks, but always the reason your soul needs. And your task is not to understand it all. It is to trust enough to keep walking, to bow with grace, to rise with love, to live with eyes wide open and a heart unafraid to break. Because the breaking reveals the light reveals the way, and the way is already within you, always has been, always will be. So walk on, luminous soul, with your head held high and your hands unclenched. Walk like the Buddha is walking beside you, because in truth, he is, and you are no longer just a seeker. You are a mirror of the Dharma. You are a vessel of compassion. You are a flame lit by truth itself. Shine, not for glory, not for praise, but because it is who you are. Shine because someone out there is walking in darkness, and your light is their way home.